Hi, everyone. Welcome to our weekly live attorney chat, but today it's a little different here at Immigration for Couples. I'm really excited to have Kim Eric here with us. She is a tax professional, and she is the CEO, the owner of Home Time Business Services. And she is in the thick of tax time, but she has graced us with her presence to share her expertise. I've had so many questions from all of you and the Facebook group, on my YouTube channel, and from my clients about taxes, because 'tis the season, right? And I just kept seeing the same questions popping up over and over. And I thought, well, who do I go to when I have tax questions? I go to the expert. I go to Kim because she's a genius. And that is not my wheelhouse. I stay in my lane of immigration. And so I reached out to Kim, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if she can come on here onto our weekly live chat to answer these common questions. And so these are the questions, basically verbatim, that I have received over and over. And I already see we have 5 people watching, so that's exciting. And we are going to just go ahead and dive into the questions that we do have. Hi, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have all of you here. I know we had an overwhelming interest in having you come, and everybody's very excited, Kim. So is there anything else that you wanted to share about what you do outside of, what you do is very complicated, very complex, helping individuals and businesses navigate the labyrinth of tax. But is there anything else that I missed that you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it all. I just want to mention that, the tax law changes so much from year to year. So even if you think you know something, even professionals have to look it up to make sure that we're not confusing it with a prior year. So that is definitely the biggest thing that I probably see on returns or comments in different forums, that people are using old tax code stuff to answer questions, and it just doesn't apply anymore. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about all the stuff that's current for 2021 tax season in any of our answers today. So it may not apply to prior years and obviously future years.
Yep. Hey, that sounds a lot like immigration. It's literally changing on a daily basis. So that's why we each focus on our lane and our lane of expertise. So thank you so much for being here. I know we're all so excited. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and we'll dive in here to our first question. Do I need to include my spouse on my taxes if we're married? And what are the benefits of filing taxes jointly?
Sure. So yes, if you are married, you're going to put your spouse on your taxes. Whether you file married jointly or married separately, their name is going to be on there, as well as their social or their ITIN. So that is the first part of that question. So yes, you definitely need to include them. So there's a lot of benefits of filing jointly, and there's a lot of detriments to filing separately. So let's get into, first off, the standard deduction. So when you are a married couple, you have a standard deduction of $25,100, which means that basically your income that you earn, we're going to take the first $25,100 and just whack it off, and we don't pay taxes on that money. That's always a good thing. Now, when you're married separately, you only get $12,500. So you do have a little bit of a disincentive. It's not very much, but it's there. They've leveled that off a little bit more. Joint filers, though, have a higher income threshold for your tax brackets, or the amount of tax, your percentage of tax that you pay. So when you combine your income, you may actually be in a lower tax bracket. So that's going to save you some money. If you're married and you file separately, like we said, you might have that higher tax rate and pay more taxes. But when you file separately, pretty much the biggest reason I see people file separately is one spouse has lower income and a ton of medical expenses that they want to be able to itemize. Now, see, here's the downside with that. If one itemizes, the other has to itemize. So if the other person doesn't have stuff to itemize with, it doesn't actually end up benefiting them.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So, so there's some tax credits when you're filing jointly: earned income credit, American Opportunity and Lifetime Learning education tax credits, and the credit for adoption expenses, and also child and dependent care tax. So if you file married separately, you lose all of those credits to your tax return. So that is definitely a downside. Additionally, if you're filing separately, you cannot take the student loan interest deduction.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we all know tax debt, or your student loan debt, is huge in the States. So, you definitely want to be able to do that. And then if you're investing in the stock market and you have a capital loss, your deduction limit is higher if you're married.
So it seems like there's a lot of benefits then to
There's a
filing jointly.
lot of benefits. And that's just, hitting the main things that most taxpayers may or may not hit.
Sure. And the other thing, and you really this question comes up because this is immigration for couples, and so we have couples who are recently married and just starting that next chapter in their lives. And while this is we're dedicating today to questions about taxes, I did want to throw in some immigration benefits too. When we're working with couples, when you're in the context of couples, rather, part of the process when they're filing their case is that they have to show they have a bona fide relationship, a relationship that's based on love and not to receive an immigration benefit. And one of the things that immigration looks for is whether or not you file taxes jointly. And so it sounds like there's benefits on both sides, the immigration
Definitely.
side and the tax side. And so it's really important that you are getting tax advice and looking into those benefits for your immigration case and from a tax perspective to file your taxes jointly. All right, we can move on to the next question. I've had a lot of questions about whether or not or when can or should someone file as married head of household.
So married head of household is not an option. So
Right.
once you're married, you have one of two options: married joint or married separately. When you're single, you can file single, widowed, or head of household. So the only way you can file head of household is when you are single and have a qualified dependent.
Okay.
So that is probably one of those things that I see incorrect on self-prepared returns most often, is that someone is married and they try to do the head of household, and it will get kickback from the IRS every time because it's not an option.
Yes, and that is exactly why I've seen this question. I think for couples, the couples that we represent in immigration for couples, a lot of times one individual will be living abroad during this process of bringing them to the United States. And so I think there's this rumor or this belief that they're supposed to be filing married head of household, and I have seen that as well. And so that was the point of that question, to give everybody clarity, to clarify that rumor.
Not an option.
Well, thanks
and here's a nice little thing. There's actually a tax tool on irs.gov that says, what's my filing status? And you can actually go through. It takes maybe 10-15 minutes to answer all their questions, and they'll tell you what tax filing status you should be using.
Okay, well, that is great. that is a good tip, a good tool. And I know we have some questions, and that's great. If everybody wants to, we have some main topics that have been the common questions we have been receiving. So once we go through all of those, with the time we have left, Kim said she would be able to answer those questions as well. All right. So the next question is, what if my spouse lives outside of the United States or doesn't have a social security number yet? Can we still file taxes jointly? And I would say this is the most popular question. And there's a lot of belief that that's where that head of household comes in. And do I still file single because my spouse doesn't have this social security number yet? So I'll go ahead and let you share your expertise on that.
So, yes, you can still file. What has to happen is we have to apply for an ITIN, or an individual tax identification number. And so, as part of the tax filing forms, we complete a W-7 requesting that ITIN for the spouse who doesn't have a social security number yet.
And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding too about what an ITIN number is. I know you just kind of explained it, but could you give a little bit more information, a little bit more context about that?
So an ITIN is an individual tax identification number. So it's basically used for people to get a same length number assigned to them that needs to be renewed on a regular basis until you actually do qualify for a social security number. So it's a way for you to pay taxes, be listed on the form, take advantage of those benefits of being married. So there's a lot of different reasons why you would use one and you would have one, but do realize that they do expire.
Yeah, and that's great. And really the context for all of you who are watching too, that comes up the most is if your spouse is living abroad in another country and you're going through the spouse visa process and they don't have a social security number yet because they haven't received their green card. And so there's a rumor out there, I know that it exists because I get this question all the time, is, oh, I have to wait until my spouse has the green card and is in the United States, that I have to keep filing my taxes single. And as Kim just explained, that's not the case. You get your ITIN number to be able to do that. And that, again, will help with your immigration case to show immigration that you have a real relationship. The other time that comes up is for individuals who are already in the United States and going through the adjustment of status process. With the long wait times right now to receive your work permit and your social security card, as Kim has explained, this is a great option, especially now with tax season, if you're in that position, to be able to still file your taxes jointly. So
awesome.
Yeah. And then this question is, I didn't know that I could file my taxes jointly with my spouse. Is it possible to go back and amend prior year tax filings? And this has been a common question because people have just discovered that this was a rumor and not true. So what are options in this case? So
you can always amend your tax return because it's better to have a correct return, but it's not always beneficial. So you would want to weigh the cost of preparing the amendment because obviously that's going to cost you some money with a tax professional. And compare that against the advantages that you may receive. So yes, you can always do that, but is it always beneficial? No. So that is something that you would want to discuss on a case-by-case basis, whether you should. So it's possible, but whether you should or shouldn't, that's another decision layer to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that decision for couples going through the immigration process would come from two places. From your immigration case, how is immigration going to view the fact that you haven't been filing jointly? And then on that tax side, the benefits and the drawbacks of doing that. So exactly.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of individuals, a lot of United States citizens who are living abroad, working for different companies or studying abroad and things of that nature. And they fall in love. And then after they've been living abroad for a while, and they've been employed abroad. And so there's a lot of rumors too about whether or not you have to file your taxes in the United States. So the question is, do I still have to file my taxes in the United States if I'm employed abroad?
So this kind of falls under expats. There's a lot of them throughout the world. And this is a whole subsection of the tax code. So maybe, most likely yes, but it depends. So there's tax treaties with some countries. There's, are you abroad in a U.S. territory, or are you abroad in a non-U.S. territory? Are you traveling back to the United States? Do you have a home of record still in the United States? So there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. But comes down to, and it depends on, it's a case by case basis for each person. A lot of this kind of comes down to, your amount of days in a particular country. Are you coming home? Are you not coming home? Is there an intention to never come home? So there's a lot that comes to that with the expat.
Yeah. And that really, and my advice to individuals who are asking about this and for our clients is to talk to a tax professional. But I also want to mention that really with couples who are going through the immigration process, I like that, Kim, that you mentioned that intent of returning to the United States, because immigration is looking at that. Mm-hmm. When a United States petitioner petitions for their fiance or their spouse, there's a requirement to show that you have what they call domicile, a legal term of art that means your intention, your home, for all intensive purposes, even though you're living abroad, is still the United States. That's a requirement to be able to petition for your spouse or for someone. And so that's when this comes into play. We usually have couples who, United States citizens, been living abroad for a few years and didn't think that they needed to file. We get ready to petition, and immigration is going to be looking for at least 3 years of taxes filed in the United mm-hmm. States. So I think that what I'm hearing too from my advice and your advice would be, if you don't know, ask. It depends. And so make sure that you have a tax professional in your corner to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, both from an immigration and a tax side.
And right? You have residency and domicile definitions and tax as well. Yep. So, yep. And they're not always the same in both worlds. So no. Make sure when you're speaking that language that you understand what they're asking from you. As well.
Yep. Because in the immigration context, they're looking to see that that your home, your intent is to live in the United States. So mm-hmm. Just really being proactive is what I always recommend in all situations, and asking a professional. And then I haven't filed my taxes for several years, kind of an extension of this other question, because I was living and working abroad. Am I still able to file taxes for the prior years?
Yes. So basically, the IRS always has 3 open years. However, they can make you go back as far as they need you to see if there's ever been monies owed to them. So if you haven't filed, you definitely want to, at minimum, file the past 3 years that are the open years, and then ask and wait for them to reply if they want additional years. So here's the thing that is the worst, is if you're due a refund and it's outside those 3 years, you just gave the U.S. government your money, because they don't issue refunds after those 3 open years. But if you owe, they'll take all of your money and your interest and penalties along with that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there, that, if you do owe money, they're definitely going to collect and add the interest and penalties. But if you're due a refund and it's outside those 3 open years, they don't give you back your money.
Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of couples too who weren't aware of that they've been married for a while. They were mm-hmm. also living abroad, and then they weren't aware that they could file married jointly. And like you said, they're able to get a refund, but it's capped at those 3 years. And immigration requires those 3 years of taxes. So if you haven't, again, be proactive and reach out to a tax professional, reach out to Kim to be able to help you to take care of that. Mm-hmm. And I know we have a lot of audience questions, so I'm excited about that. But before we jump over to that, I wanted to let everyone know that I am going to share Kim's scheduling link in the notes below, be it on Facebook or on the YouTube channel, wherever you happen to watch it. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can visit either to be able to access that link to schedule a tax strategy appointment with Kim. Again, 'tis the season, so you can get that taken care of, whatever your situation is, to make sure your taxes are timely and properly filed. All right, Kim, and if it's all right, I will go ahead and go over to some of the questions.
Sure.
So this is a good question. So we have couples who are engaged and they're doing a fiance visa. Mm-hmm. And so this is another rumor or confusion. If the couple isn't married yet, are they able, or can they file jointly?
No. Until you're actually married that year, you cannot file married. So it is whatever your status is on December 31st of that tax year. So basically, for the 2021 season that we're preparing now, on December 31st of 2021, were you married by midnight?
Perfect. Oh my God, we
So
have a
if
lot of
you're
New Year's
so if
weddings.
you're doing the whole New Year's Eve thing, make sure you say "I do" before midnight.
That's a good tip. And so too, to put that in context, with the fiance visa, if your fiance is entered, you have that 90 days to get married. So just as Kim was saying, if that marriage occurred before December 31st at midnight, 2021, or the tax year in question, then you'd be able to file jointly. All right. Let's see if it'll all fit on here. Random question for probably the end, but when an employer runs an employment check through EVerify, what are they able to see? For example, can they see that the new employee has an up-to-date work permit, or can they see all of the work permits in the past? I don't know if that's really a question for you,
It's not
Kim.
really a tax question. That's more employment law. So that's really not my wheelhouse. So
Sure. And I can speak generally on EVerify, that really it would depend if they have an electronic system or if they're just doing a paper I-9. You can check the USCIS I-9 website for more details about how this process works as well. In general, the employer wouldn't have access to those items. Typically, a lot of companies do still do paper I-9s, or if they do have an EVerify system, if you've been working for that company, they might be able to see past work permits, because that is something that if your work permit expires, they have to calendar themselves to work with you to get the updated information when your card renews. But that is the extent of which Kim and I can share information on that. But again, you can always check out the USCIS website and learn more about EVerify and I-9s. How can we file taxes together if the spouse does not have a green card? Okay, and that was the green card or social security number yet. And that's what I think that this question was asked before we got to that common question. So,
sure. So that's exactly, we complete the W-7 on that.
Yep, to get the ITIN number. And that's the same question here about, is it mandatory to file for an ITIN number?
So if you don't have a social security number, in order to put yourself on a tax return, you would need to file for an ITIN number. There's not a way to file without either requesting one, having one, or having one.
Yeah, okay. And my tax consultant told me it would be best to not get the ITIN number, so I don't file married. Would I have issues with my immigration case? So I think Kim and I will probably speak generally on this question, because neither of us can give complete legal or tax advice without understanding the entirety of your situation. So I want to make sure that's clear, that we're just going to give you general information. But from an immigration standpoint, if you're married, they want to see that you are filing your taxes jointly. And if you don't, they're going to have a lot of questions for you about why you aren't filing jointly, because that is what immigration considers a red flag. If you're married, there are certain things that immigration expects a married couple to do. So yes, it can cause issues with your immigration case. If you don't have an immigration attorney, I highly recommend you schedule a consultation with an immigration attorney with our firm. And then Kim, do you want to speak in general terms on this?
So from my standpoint, again, if you go through that calculator on irs.gov for what's my filing status, the first question they're going to ask is, are you married? And if the answer is yes, you don't have an option the spouse doesn't have an option to file single or head of household. They can only file married separate or married jointly. So this basically puts them filing married separately with the other spouse not filing. But again, we do have to list that other person on the married separate tax return.
Yeah, and so it sounds like on both sides, the immigration and the tax side, this could be an issue. So I highly advise that you get a second opinion on both sides. And again, I will post Kim's calendar scheduling link, so you can schedule a strategy session with her as well. And that calculator, I will also put a link.
Yeah, I'll give you that
below.
copy of that link.
That would be great. That'll be a great tool for everyone to have. And then we just have Says that sounds scary, but thank God you guys are helping me with my case. I don't know what to do. You all right? Well, it was really great to have you here with us, Kim. Thank you so much for your willingness to share your time and expertise with us. And thank you for all of you who joined us today. I hope that this answered all of your questions about taxes. Again, we'll put that scheduling link in there so you can get your strategy session set with Kim. All right. Have a great rest of the week. I will see you all next week. Take care.
Thanks, Megan, for having me. Have a great one.
You too.